Hello, you little rapscallions. Watching videos about cannibals, are we? What does the cannibal do after he dumps his girlfriend? He wipes his ass. Anyway, sorry about that, let's jump right into the story. In the spring of 2005, 19-year-old Anna Norell is found lying on the floor in her home. She has been stabbed to death. And her partner, who was left with her in the apartment, is arrested for murder. 7 months later, 34-year-old Camilla is washing dishes when there is a sudden knock on the door. She is amazed at who is standing there and takes her last breaths minutes later. Both women have fallen victim to the same blood-sucking killer. But only you and me know that right now, so let's talk a little about our killer. When the boy Lennart Persson was born in 1977, it was soon discovered that he had a congenital defect in his legs, which meant that he had to spend many hours in hospital during his childhood, isolated from other kids, and thus became a different child. Besides his illness, there were other small things that made him stand out from the crowd. He painted, for example, his snowman black with fangs. He saw everyday things in a way that other children did not. A former classmate says that the whole family was strange and not many people wanted to go to Lennart's home to play. Due to the social ostracism after school, it seemed natural that he spent most of his time with his parents and foster siblings Anna and Camilla more than with his schoolmates. Oh, do you remember those names? Why would he kill his own foster siblings? Because Lennart was more than a human, he was a real vampire and needed to do vampire business, or at least in his own mind. It was only when he was in his teens that the environment began to see his social sides. He applied to the circus line in Gävle and developed an interest in country, both the music and the lifestyle, and moving to the countryside was something he longed for, caressing cow teats and drink milk straight from the source. At the same time, neighbors and passers-by opened their eyes more and more to Lennart's family. There was a stench of cat urine and complaints flowed into the Environmental Protection Department of the municipality. Inside the house there were over 60 cats. They were sick, wildly starved, and the floors were covered in feces. I bet they didn't have a rat problem at least. Moving on. Lennart manages to finish school. And when he turns 18, he gets an apartment from his parents. It was in this apartment that the first thoughts of killing began to flourish in him, in connection with his isolation from the outside world. And growing up with cat shit everywhere probably played a role as well. He had not met his beloved foster sisters, Anna and Camilla, for a long time at this time, but they were with him in mind. All the freaking time. In 2003, 2 years before the first murder, it was discovered that he had sent anonymous letters with gross pornographic content to Camilla. And she had only thought that it was sent from an ex-boyfriend. As we all would have. Lennart crawls out of his isolation and finds a job in a steam kitchen in Gävle. And one day, for reasons only a vampire boy like himself would understand, he tells his co-workers that he made a 14-year-old girl pregnant, but that he and his girlfriend would adopt the child because his girlfriend was sterile. He also said that he lived with the two women. Obviously, this was an insane lie that he felt the need to prove. So the next day he brings pictures of his girlfriends, which he shows to colleagues. One girl had blonde and shoulder-length hair. The other had curly dark hair. Later, after the murders, one of the co-workers was able to recognize one of the women in the pictures as Anna Norell, Lennart's foster sister. By colleagues he is described as a total recluse, he does not talk to anyone, and goes straight home to his apartment after work. At home in his safe nest, the desire to kill increased day after day, and he became afraid of the people outside the door. I do not trust anyone, I have a feeling that they want me badly, he describes the feeling in future interrogations. And soon the murderous desire became so strong that he could not control himself. He felt that he could not stay in the apartment because then, he would do something with the people in the area. Like drinking their blood without asking first. He deliberately stopped paying the rent to be evicted. After the eviction he moves home to his parents and settles in a shed that stands on the plot. He seldom leaves his new safe habitat. No one asked how he was feeling or why he was shutting himself in. Nor did anyone know that at night he dreamed of demons and blood. And at last, the dreams and voices became too loud and too difficult to ignore. Like a little vampire larva, he shed his human cocoon, and in the early morning of March 13, 2005, he was filled with rage and the wish to hurt someone. He had not yet gained the ability to turn into a bat, so instead of using flying as his way of transportation, he decided to take the bus to Sätra to meet his sister Anna and her newborn son. He has a Snickers nay, also known as a knife, in his pocket. When he arrives at the apartment building, Anna opens the door for him. She is newly awake and only wears a nightgown. They talk for a while and suddenly Lennart's eyes turns blank. He pulls out the knife and stabs his sister until she falls to the ground. Her partner Tommy, who just woke up, enters the kitchen. He sees a crazy man with a bloody knife and how his girlfriend lies dead on the ground. In pure panic, he runs out of the apartment and runs down to the last floor of the apartment building where his father lives. His father lets him in and together they call the police. He explains to the police that someone has entered his apartment and stabbed his girlfriend to death and that she remains lifeless in the apartment. Later, pure-hearted Lennart said that Tommy is a coward, that he should have protected Anna, but if he did, I would kill him too. I could not stop, I just stabbed and then I did the worst of everything. I bent over her and drank her blood. And then I cut up parts of her. Suddenly, a little of Lennart's humanity came back and he realizes that Anna was about to die. He tries to save her, but she is already dead. His eyes turns blank once again and he remembers that Anna has a son, which he wants to kill as well. When he does not find the son, he searches for the way out through the corridors. First he gets lost down in the basement but then manages to get out and hop on bus again. Sitting there, he hears the ambulance sirens screaming outside. After a while he gets off the bus and runs into a library to wash his bloody hands. He thinks it's weird but successful that no one discovered his bloody clothes on the bus. Once at home in the shed, he gets rid of his clothes but keeps a piece of fabric from his jacket to be able to smell the blood. Like a vampiric health potion. That night he cannot sleep. He thought he would be arrested soon, but the police never came. Let's back up to after Anna's partner Tommy called the police. He is now waiting for the police on the balcony of his dad's apartment. He sees the murderer come out of the gate wearing a checkered shirt that was red with blood. Minutes later the police arrive and Tommy shows in which direction the crazy man went. The police give Tommy a look of yeah right, and then takes him to the police station for questioning. He tells what happened but notices that the police do not believe him. The police thinks it sounds unlikely that a stranger would suddenly appear in their apartment to murder his partner while he himself was asleep. Tommy had been a violent little whippersnapper in his younger years, so that didn't speak in his favor. Despite telling the truth, he is instead arrested for the murder with full restrictions. The police were immediately convinced that they had already found their perpetrator. Tommy has to answer questions and is pressured by the police to tell the truth, which he has already done. They put Tommy in custody. Sherlock Holmes would be proud. Even though the police thinks that they already have the right man, they investigate the crime scene and sends DNA to the test lab. The result shows that in some of the bloodstains there are traces of a foreign DNA. A while later, the same DNA will be found on some letters with sexually offensive content that was sent anonymously to the mother of small children Camilla. She is contacted by the police and tells that she thinks it is her ex-boyfriend who sent the letters during the investigation. Anna has been placed in a foster home as a child. They interrogate the foster family but do not get anything out of it. They still have not understood the connection between Anna and Camilla, but it will be late in the autumn of the same year. But at different times they begin to suspect that the family had something to do with the murder and called there to get a DNA sample from our scalawag Lennart. He understood that he was about to be arrested and at the same time felt a strong desire for blood once again. He started to go around to look for someone to murder and drink their blood. October 25, 2005. 7 months have passed since Anna was murdered. Lennart goes around looking for a victim. He first looks for children because he was sure he could beat them in a fight, but there were always parents nearby. Then came to think that his other foster sister Camilla is alone at home. He steers his sea blue bike towards her apartment building. She is doing the dishes when he arrives and her daughter is still at school. "Oh, this was a sudden visit," Camilla says, surprised. Her smile fades when she looks into Lennart's crazy eyes, and he pulls out his newly bought knife and stabs her several times. Camilla is holding her hands to her face and shouts at him to stop, which he actually does. She is fatally injured but not yet dead. Lennart strolls around in the apartment and into the bathroom to wash his hands and the knife. Once completely clean, he then goes back and stabs her to death. He looks for the girl who is not home. When he did not find her, he goes back to Camilla and drinks of her blood. Then he goes back into the bathroom and washes up again and gets a déjà vu. He feels satisfied and fulfilled with his blubber gut filled with blood. The demons in his head are now quiet. When the evening comes, he is again convinced that the police should come and pick him up, but he still feels like he wants to murder again. A small stream of his long-gone humanity slowly crawls back into his dark soul. He needs to stop himself from harming others. And to stop himself, he tries to commit suicide. He drinks abrasives and turns the knife to himself and cuts his wrists. But Lennart is a swole vampire. This does not kill him. He becomes weak and stumbles out the shed to the garden where the police are already waiting. The news about the man who drank from his foster sister's blood was talked about and noticed, first in Sweden but then also in foreign media. For Tommy, Anna's partner, the arrest was good news and a new chapter in his life. Besides the fear of the killer, he had worried that the investigation would be put down, that he would always be seen as the guy who murdered his partner and got away with it. The police apologized for having detained him for so long but felt no support from society. The trial against Lennart Persson, Gävle District Court, began shortly after 9 o'clock on Thursday morning at 15:30 in the afternoon. The verdict fell after a so-called individual deliberation for 10 minutes. The district court agreed to sentence him to forensic psychiatric care with a special discharge examination. During the interrogations, he admitted that he drank their blood, and that he ate from Anna's body. His reason was that he wanted their souls to become his. The judge was understanding and let him go free. Or not. He was placed in a psychiatric hospital. The years went by and his social skills improved and his attitude to the crimes changed. He is bothered by memories of his crimes. They evoke anxiety, guilt, and violent nightmares. In the spring of 2016, he admitted that he had thoughts of harming women and children, but he did not want it to happen. He therefore refrained from both outings and occupational therapy. The risk of recidivism in crime is seen, however, still as very high. "It will take many years before I get out of here. I think I have to at least sit here for at least 14 to 15 years. I both think and dream a lot about blood and murder. It's very vampiric. Not a single day goes by without bloodthirst. I can think it's scary, but there is nothing I can do about it." Lennart often thinks of Anna and Camilla, who he regarded as his sisters. "I feel a little regret sometimes. My dark side led me into that path and there was no return. I can understand what I have done and why they were easy victims." He talks fast and uncomplicated. He hides nothing. He sounds almost proud when he says, "I'm a vampire and a cannibal. I realize myself sometimes and can think that it's scary to feel the bloodthirst all the time. I'm fine here, and now I get to be with the other patients. The first year I was locked up and isolated. In addition, I have daily telephone contact with my family and sometimes they come here and visit me. Naturally, the doctors don't think it's good for me to constantly be thirsty for blood, but for a vampire like myself, it's completely normal. There's nothing I can do about it." And there we have it, folks. The tale of Lennart Persson and his shenanigans.